Hello, everyone. My name is Tori Blackwell, and I am a science instructor here at Clackamas Community College. And I want to welcome you all to our first STEM Talk of winter term. This STEM Talk is a student panel that is designed to help our CCC students get a feel for what it's like to transfer to a new school as a STEM student and get to visit with some of our wonderful CCC alumni. Dr. Eric Lee is going to be leading our panelists, and I will be assisting with the questions. So once we have had all of our panelists and everyone introduce themselves, if you have questions for the panelists, you can type those into the chat, and I will relay those to the panelists so that we can make sure that our meeting runs smoothly. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Eric.
Yeah, and just maybe one other thing that I'll add just so that the chat doesn't fill up with lots of things. Let's just have everybody write private messages to Tori. So just change your to thing if you want to ask a question to say to Tori Blackwell and ask any questions that you would like to him, and he will compile them. Hopefully we'll get to all of your questions. We have a number of panelists today from a lot of different STEM areas. All of them are CCC alumni, and they're here to share with you some of their experiences in transferring to PSU or OSU, and then also some of them have graduated recently and can share with you what it's like after you finish. Some of them have started work, or some of them are looking for jobs now. Some are also involved in research, and they can share some of those experiences too. So I'm excited to hear from them. I hope you are too. Before we get started with questions, we wanted to let you hear from the panelists themselves. And so they're going to give a little introduction about, maybe when they graduated from CCC, what their major was, where they went to school, and anything else they'd like to add about what they're currently working on or what their plans are for the future. So let's start it up with our first panelist, Matthew Curry.
Hi, my name is Matthew Curry. I technically graduated from CCC. I actually transferred without a degree, so a little bit different than some. But 2018 was when I transferred over to Oregon State, and I just graduated in December with a bioengineering degree. And I have been looking for work, haven't found a job yet. I've had a couple interviews, haven't heard back on those yet, and have a couple more lined up, so keeping my fingers crossed. I also do have experience as a research intern, so if anybody has questions like that, I can answer maybe some of those as well.
Well, thank you, Matthew. Let's hear next from Lauren.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Shepard. I am a civil engineering major at PSU. I'm in my third year right now. I'm also a Build Exito scholar, and last summer I had an internship with Howard S. Wright working on the construction of the new Student Services building on the CCC campus. And for Build Exito, I work in a lab where we study water equality and water justice. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Medina.
Hello, everyone. I'm Medina. I graduated from PSU in August with a degree in computer science, and I am currently working with the Build Exito program to help support their enrichment program for juniors and seniors.
And Medina was also a former STEM club president, which she didn't mention. Also, speaking of former STEM club presidents, we have a few of them here. Alexander Bamatov was also part of the STEM club. We'll have you talk next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alexander. I went to PSU with the transfer from CCC. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I'm in my third year of mechanical engineering. I already got placed into one of my internships through MECOP, and I'm hoping to get into the second one.
Cool. All right. And let's see. Next up, thank you, Alexander. Next up, we have Jaylani Cooper.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaylani Cooper. I was an administrator for STEM Club back in the good old days. I'm currently a mechanical engineering student at Portland State University. I'm also within the MECOP program that offers internships for students, and then also in the STEM Scholars program if you're looking to try to get some scholarship money through being an STEM major. That's something I can also give info on as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great because I know that scholarship applications coming up. So those who are transferring probably could benefit from that a lot. Next up we have, let's see, Sarah Autry.
Hello, my name is Sarah Autry. I am in my second year at PSU, so I will be graduating next year with, I'm double majoring in biology and clinical health sciences. I am Build Exito cohort 4, so I'm graduating from Build Exito this spring. And I am I'm interning in the OHSU Trauma Research Lab and working on a paper for my honors thesis. I'm studying the effects of Lovenox on trauma patients with a BMI of over 30.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Sounds like a busy year. Next up we have Annalisa Hernandez.
Hi, I'm Annalisa. I graduated from Portland State in 2019 with a degree in mechanical engineering. And I work at a company called Corollo as a mechanical engineer, and they do all water, wastewater consulting. So it's all the systems, and work on pumps, blowers, rotating equipment, HVAC, plumbing, just a bunch of different stuff.
All right, thank you, Annalisa. And next up we have, last up actually, our last panelist of today is Trevor Martin.
Hey guys, my name is Trevor. I'll be graduating from PSU this spring with a bachelor's in public health. I was lucky enough to get accepted into dental school at OHSU this December. So starting in June, I will be doing a research fellowship in biomaterials, specifically implant materials. And then in August, I will be matriculating into the School of Dentistry.
Thank you, Trevor. So lots of different experiences. As I mentioned earlier, please send Tori private messages if you have questions. He'll be reading off any of your questions to the panelists. We would like this to be your time to ask any questions to the former CCC students. So make it valuable. Like choose things that you want to know, want to hear from them, and anything's fair game. Well, at least anything that's related to the transfer from CCC and their experiences afterward. So Tori, do you want to start off?
Sure, I can start off with one of I have a pair of questions, so that way if we don't get another question from the chat that too soon, I have a little bit of time for you. The first is, what was the hardest thing for you once you transferred?
Okay, so Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I figured I'd jump in there since no one else. Yeah, so the hardest thing for me was just not getting lost in the wash, kind of, because it's Oregon State. I mean, I don't have experience at Portland State, but Oregon State, it's a pretty big campus, and the class sizes can be pretty daunting. And it was something I expected, but I think I struggled with it first, and I found that you have to really lean on the TAs and kind of go out of your way to introduce yourself to the instructors, because it's really easy to get kind of lost in all the noise because of sometimes you'll be in class with 300, 250 other students. So you have to kind of go out of your way to get the personalized instruction that you got at CCC, because you could anytime you go talk to Tori or Eric or your other instructors, but it's a little harder there, so you have to lean on TAs quite a bit.
Medina, do you want to answer that as well?
For me, it was probably not having a community that I was comfortable with and a part of. So that sort of means a couple different things, including Like I didn't know people who were already at PSU studying computer science who I could ask, hey, is this schedule of classes insane or not? So my first term, I ended up taking like one of the hardest courses of the computer science major, along with 3 other classes, because I had no clue. And that's what they had on their advising sheet as the suggested course load for the term, I guess. So yeah, not having a community to like really go and ask things like that about like, what's the student experience rather than, oh, what does my advisor tell me to do?
Anyone want to add anything to Medina or Matthews? If not,
I can say,
oh, one more thing. Okay, go ahead.
yeah. With the PSU, I'm not sure of other schools. They make it easier to transfer to PSU from what I heard from other people who are going to OSU. But even then, you still have to, like, when you register and you apply, you have to look out for some emails that say, okay, now you have to do these steps and you have to follow all of them in order to get into the PSU school, plus the any like engineering school or any other school you're going to.
And then Jaylani.
There it goes. For me, kind of working off Medina, it was the sense of community. So it was a new environment. So I didn't really know much of anyone there at first, but at least for me, in the very end of it, what I learned was going to my department building. So in my case, it was the engineering building. And that's where I would bump into former classmates from CCC or new classmates I'd have in various classes at PSU. Another place was the library. I know this is kind of hard to hear now because we're in this whole COVID pandemic and all you can do is connect people through Zoom, but I'm hoping that soon enough we'll be back in class. But I would highly suggest going to the department that you're studying for and then also hitting up the library.
And then Tori, do you want to say the next question, I guess?
Sure. Did Trevor have his hand up still?
Oh,
Yeah.
I missed it. I may have missed that. Sorry.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to say that transferring to Saga to PSU, transferring wasn't really that bad. I mean, the most important thing I'd say is just meet with an advisor and make sure that, you know, you're taking the right classes for your degree. Also, my experience was similar to Matt's, where the big classes, it's harder to get, you know, one-on-one, I guess, tutoring or advice from your teacher. But I found that they all kind of went out of their way to make sure that if you need help, then you can get it. One of my, actually both of my OChem teachers, they took time after class and went and sat in like a study room. And if any students needed help, they'd gather around and draw reactions on the whiteboard and answer any questions for like 30, 45 minutes after class.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay, I'm going to move to questions that we have from chat. And the first one, I'm going to modify it a little bit so that more people can answer it. The original question is best job to have during school for mechanical engineering. And I think to just broaden it out, just what were the types of jobs that people, if you did work, what types of jobs did you have and what types of jobs would you suggest?
Okay. Did any of our panelists work? All right, Medina, go ahead.
So I worked in a research lab in the basement of the engineering building, which was great for me because my work and my school were in the same location. Yeah, I think on-campus jobs would probably be a great option just because there's no commute time or like 10 minutes, say. But yeah, also I would suggest try to get something that would give you relevant experience in your field, regardless of what that field is.
And Jaylani, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same path. I didn't get a chance to work in a research lab before COVID hit. I was on my track to, but for the last year, I've been working at Costco. So it's totally different than your career. But if you're looking for part-time work, definitely any grocery store is a good plan as well.
Annalisa?
I always had a job throughout college. I kind of did the same thing of working at school. I tutored a lot at CCC. And then once I got to PSU, I tried to do that a little bit. It wasn't quite as easy. I tried to find some independent stuff. But I had a friend who worked IT at a memory care center, and he got me a job there. But it wasn't exactly what my interests were in. But I got more of just like a parallel and more exposure to different things. Turned out I wasn't super into it, but also, I mean, that's good. And now I can use some of the stuff that I learned from there in this job. And being able to put that on a resume is pretty valuable, I think. I don't know.
Okay. And then let's see, Lauren?
So yeah, to actually just piggyback off of that, my big thing right now is I'm not doing anything that I can't put on a resume. So I'm doing private tutoring a couple of times a week, and then I'm working in a lab on campus. But then this summer I had the opportunity to do the internship at CCC. So any sort of work that you're doing, you know, make it something that you can put on a resume. If you're working at Costco, then like think about all of the ways that you're displaying like leadership potential and like all of these organizational and communication skills that you're learning there. You know, every job has value. It's just in how you sell it and how you understand what it is that you're doing and what your responsibilities are.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good advice. Let's hear from Sarah.
So I was a little different. I taught figure skating prior to COVID because I have my background is competitive figure skating. So I was able to earn a decent amount of money in a short amount of time. But also with the Build Exito program, I was able to focus on school and my work in the lab, and with my goal of going to medical school and getting the relevant experience in the lab that I was placed was very valuable. And so I can't say enough about the Build Exito program and how it's been very supportive to me in every possible way.
All right, and let's hear from Trevor too.
Yeah, so I worked as a server just to pay for school, but I think that most of my most valuable experiences came from volunteering. Originally, I did want to go into medicine, but through volunteering from a hospital, doing lab work, I just kind of realized that I didn't like that environment. And then when I went on to shadow my dentist, and I volunteered at Medical Teams International, which is a mobile dental unit that works with Providence, I kind of turned a 180 and realized that it was my alley. So I think those volunteer experiences, internships, research projects can't be, understated.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see, Tori, do you want to ask another question?
Sure. I will ask the scariest question for me on the list. The next question is, what class at CCC was the most challenging?
Okay, if it's coming from engineering prospect, the dynamics and maybe MATLAB was really challenging, but it definitely, taking it with Eric, it prepared me. I was scared of a 300 level MATLAB class, but that was a joke compared to what we learned.
Okay, Lauren?
The physics series with Greg Bolstrom, that was the hardest series for me because he really does a great job of like teaching you how to think differently about problems and dissect them. But I found that like method and the way that he taught us to kind of take things apart and put them back together very helpful. In particularly in some of the upper level courses that I'm doing right now. And I need to email him and thank him for that.
Jaylani?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of Lauren. Definitely the physics with calculus series was the most difficult classes for me. Back in the day, I was like, what the heck am I doing? But now I'm using a lot of what I learned from Greg Bostrom in my everyday classes for engineering. So that's a plus. You know, back then I was just like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to get through it. And then now I'm like, if it wasn't for him and then Eric Lee, there's no way I would be getting through this stuff.
All right, let's see. So next, let's do Sarah.
So for me, this last term was like pretty challenging because not only was I doing full-time school and I'm a parent, but we were also moving. So trying to do all these things and move at the same time, which I don't recommend, was very challenging. With a class that I think that was the most challenging was Intro to Genetics, because I feel like there's a personality difference between my professor and myself and the way I was learning. And I learned better in a classroom. So, and the access to my professor wasn't what I needed. So all those factors put together kind of made it a more of a challenge for me.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Let's see. Oh, Matthew?
Yeah, I was going to say the physics with calculus series as well, but since that's kind of been hashed out, I'd say my second place would probably be the microbiology class at CCC. It's a pretty tough one. I mean, it was one of my favorite classes because I kind of love that stuff, like working with, microorganisms and whatnot. But at the same time, it was a lot of information in one term.
All right, so Tori, do you have another question?
I do. I feel like I'm calling bingo. The next question is there anything that you wish you knew before you transferred that you did not already know?
Okay, so Medina will start us off.
So I don't know if this is the same for other majors or if it's something like a specific requirement for computer science, but all of my CS electives that I took at Clackamas were worthless at PSU, and I had to take more arts and letters and social science classes that were 100 and 200 level classes to meet a like 27 credit requirement. And while some of what I did learn in those CS elective classes were useful, it was also like, oh great, now I have to take more classes to graduate. So yeah, probably if you're able to meet with an advisor when you're thinking about transferring to PSU to really get down the requirements of your bachelor's of science or bachelor's of art degree, whatever you're going for, because those things can come and hit you unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely some good advice. Trevor, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely undervalued peer mentorship. I mean, the first thing you when I just try to find friends, taking physics and OChem with me at the same time last year. So we go to the library after class and work on the lab or something, and it was extremely helpful. Also, the pre-dental club, if any of you guys are pre-dental, the pre-dental club at HSU was helpful. It's a bunch of current dental students there, and they get together about once a month, and you can ask them any questions. They go over how to study for the dental admissions test, what to expect, things like that. And it was extremely helpful. I thought I was ready to apply this summer, and after talking to them, I realized I had about half my application missing, and I was able to get it together in like month and a half, and was end up getting accepted. So yeah, definitely don't undervalue the benefits of peer mentoring.
Anyone else want to add anything? Okay, otherwise we'll have our next question from Tori.
All right. The next question I have is, people wanted to know how the panelists decided on which school they were going to transfer to. Was it based on a specific major, reputation of the school, or other factors?
Okay. All right, so let's start with Matthew.
Yeah, so for me, I originally started at CCC as a biology major, and then actually taking the physics with calculus course kind of led me towards the engineering path. And so I always wanted to keep the biology aspect of it in engineering. So bioengineering was kind of where I wanted to go. And PSU doesn't offer a chemical or bioengineering program. So Oregon State was kind of the forced option for me.
So just kind of sometimes not every school has every major, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Jaylani?
For me, it was based on how affordable it was going to be. At first, I wanted to go to Oregon State, and I thought of how wonderful that would be, and I could live in a dorm, I'd be away from my parents, and how life would be just so amazing. And then I started looking at it, I'm like, crap, I don't have that much money, you know. And so I started looking at ways I could pay for the university. And so I came to learn about the Transfers Finish Free program that some of you may be able to apply for and grant. And then also the STEM Scholar program through Portland State University has paid for all my tuition at Portland State. And so once I had applied and got the news that I was one of like the 14 people that was granted that, I realized I would be stupid not taking up that opportunity and going to the rest of my college for free. And so what it came down to was the financial reasons. And I'm very happy with my decision.
Well, thank you. Sarah, do you want to add to some of their decision choices?
Yeah, so I have a family, and so I needed an institution that was accessible. And at the time I lived right next to the Orange Line, and so I could just jump on the Orange Line and go straight down to PSU. So, and also Build Exito is at PSU, and I wanted to continue in that program. I'm very glad I did. I think the education has been really great. And there's plenty of opportunities there. And they have a wide variety of majors. So not every major, but they do have a wide variety of schools.
Trevor?
For me, it was, like Jay said, definitely financials, especially when I started looking into graduate programs. So I actually went down in November to interview at NSU in Miami. And while I was down there, it was like 75 degrees the whole time. Gyms and restaurants were open, which they weren't down here. And it was just a beautiful place. But as soon as I started comparing tuition, and OHSU was almost half the price for in-state tuition, I kind of had to, suck it up and, stay in Oregon. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, especially in dental, each institution is going to teach you how to do a fill-in. They're going to teach you how to, care for patients and do x-rays. So finance has definitely played a big role in where I chose.
If no one else has anything, let's go ahead and get to the next question.
The next question is, how big a difference is there between your university and CCC? Specifically, they pointed out workloads, teacher approachability, walkability, things like that.
We'll start with Sarah.
So for most of my professors, when I email them, they get back to me like pretty quickly. And right now it's Zoom ability. So there's, their office hours are more flexible because they don't have to be in their office. But as far as workload, there has been definitely a difference in how much work there is to turn in. So like, for instance, there's just as much reading to do, but there's not as much like daily work to turn in. So it's on you to make sure you know the material.
So Annalise, could you do the next one? Yeah.
Yeah, so for the mechanical engineering department at Portland State, as with, I imagine, a lot of the departments, there's just a large spectrum of what the professors expect and also how they teach. And so some were pretty good, maybe they didn't give a lot of workload. They helped walk you through a lot of different things, super supportive. And then others were not as good in that way, in my opinion. Maybe they gave a lot of work, didn't explain things as much. And so it largely depended on who you had. And in general, the workload is probably going to be more because you're taking more advanced classes. But I don't know, it depends so much on who you end up getting as a teacher for a given class.
Medina, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I agree with what Annalise was saying. It depends a lot based on which professor you're taking the class with. But Rate My Professor is a great way to sort of figure that out. But I would say make sure to read what people are actually saying. Is the person who's reviewing it just lazy and didn't want to do any of the work? Was it really a problem with the professor? And another thing that I would say is that for me, I felt like the jump from lower division classes to upper division classes was really, really hard. There was definitely a significant increase in difficulty of classes, but once I got used to upper division classes, like 300, 400 level classes, there wasn't that much of a difference between the difficulty as I went through my junior and senior year.
Sorry, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll same thing pretty much. Like, it really depends as far as workload goes, the class and the professor. Like, there were some classes where I had weekly assignments, like, multiple assignments per week, and I felt like I was, doing a lot more work than other classes. But then there's other classes like the biochemistry series. Depending on which instructor you have, basically your entire grade is based off of 2 midterms and a final, and that's it. So it just kind of depends, like they said. But it is a lot. I can't remember who said it first, but it is a lot more on you to get the work done. You know, especially like that class like biochemistry, there was worksheets and stuff supplied, but there was no, like, it was on you to do them. You didn't have to turn them in, you didn't get credit for them, but if you didn't do them, you weren't going to do well in the class. So yeah, you definitely have to take it upon yourself. And then as far as approachability, like I was saying before, it's just, you kind of have to go out of your way to make yourself to introduce yourself to the instructors and build a rapport with them. And then also I'll reiterate, like, you know, reaching out to the TAs, because a lot of the times the TAs that you have in your labs or recitations took the class the year before or a couple years prior, so they're really good resources for getting information. And then, yeah, give yourself a lot of extra time getting to class. At least Oregon State, depending on if you have to park off campus or where you're parking, or if you're staying in the dorms, it could take you, 15 minutes to, like, at a pretty good walk to get from class to class. So give yourself more time.
Yeah, thank you for all those pieces of advice. Do we have Lauren next?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's a lot of things I can't speak to in that regard because my entire first year at PSU has been virtual so far, and I don't think that's going to change. So there's a lot of transitional things that I think that my entire cohort has missed out on. It's made it easier in some ways, it's made it more difficult in other ways. But as far as the workload goes, I think, as Medina was saying, the jump from like the 200 level courses to the 300 level courses is pretty intense. Not necessarily in difficulty, but in complexity of what it is that you're doing. I find that suddenly we're being asked in our civil engineering track, we're being asked to combine multiple concepts at once, whereas previously we had just been working on understanding the fundamentals of the concepts. So now it's not more necessarily, it's just significantly more complex.
And Alexander, did you have anything to add, or I don't remember? No, you were good. Okay. All right. Tori, do you want to ask the next question?
All right. The next question on my list is, what makes the best candidate for MECOP? What should I focus on when applying?
So anyone have
And I can just expand that because another person asked if people on the panel had any advice for applying for scholarships. So I think those are kind of similar questions because I know there are some people that
a little different. MECOP is an internship program, so we could do those as separate questions.
Okay.
And Jalen, if you want to start and maybe just describe what MECOP is for those who don't know.
Yeah, so I'm a MECOP student currently. For people that don't know what MECOP is, it's a program that assists engineering students in finding internships. And I think I don't know what the GPA standard is right now. Is it like 2.8 or 3.0, something like that? Anyway, for those that are in it, something that you do want to start preparing for is, or at least looking into, is getting involved. I know it's kind of hard right now, but any type of involvement or projects that you do on the side is something that you can put in your profile. And at the very end of the day, those MECOP employers, or the people employed, the people that are trying to get you a job are looking at your portfolio, and they're going to see like, hey, were you in STEM club? What type of role did you do? Were you in ASG, the Associated Student Government? What type of projects did you work on? For me, I tried to make sure I got as involved as possible in my last year at CCC before I got my associates. So that's when I started getting more involved in STEM club, and then doing ASG, and then other little things here and there. Even working within the advising center, that was something I did for a year as well there at CCC. So involvement is key. Things that you want to prepare for are behavioral questions. I know some people are probably going to think, oh, okay, I need to study up on my, my statics classes, or I need to study up on the rest of my engineering classes. It's not that. It's about who you are as a person, whether you can communicate effectively. That's the type of person that they're looking for at the end of the day. And I can definitely, I actually created like a Word document that suggests some questions to study up for, and I can post that in the chat as well.
Annalisa?
One of the biggest and most difficult things about, in general, finding a job or getting a job is communication. And so as Jaylani said, you can study up on subjects, statics, dynamics, whatever, but you have to be able to communicate those things to people. And MECOP, when you go in, you haven't done too much, like you've done some classes and you have some interests. Show those interests and communicate them to the recruiters or whatever, their industry people. But practice learning how to just talk with them about what you're doing and what you know and how you can be effective to them. And they understand that you're going into this with the purpose of learning. And they want that. They want to teach you. That's why they're wanting MECOP interns. So just learn to effectively communicate.
All right. Okay, Alexander, go ahead.
Yeah, like Jaylani said, definitely try to do some extracurricular things in school, be involved somewhere. If you have a spring break or summer break, get involved somewhere, do something, I don't know, fix something up if you're a mechanical engineer, or make your own kind of projects and run with it. Then there's something to talk about, and people like that, or the MECOP people definitely like that when you go out of your way to experience something or to learn something or to fix something and come up, find problems, find solutions. That's a big thing.
I'll also add, I haven't announced this yet, but we will have 2 sessions for those interested in MECOP in the next couple of months, one probably in February and one in March. And so more details to come, and I'll share that with all of the engineering and computer science students. So it's a program for engineering and computer science. And I think some business majors, although I expect not many of the business majors are at this Zoom meeting right now. So let's do our second question that Tori mentioned as well, which is about scholarships. And so if anyone has suggestions about how to get scholarships, or really anything that you would suggest to help out students that are at CCC that want to apply for scholarships to help pay for their schooling. Let's start with Sarah.
So I received a scholarship, an OSAC scholarship, this last year to pay for this year. And one of the things that I have been taught is that scholarship committees want to know about the adversity you have overcome. And it's not a place to like list every little thing that you've struggled with. But what they want to see is briefly, in broad strokes, what you have overcome and how you have achieved in spite of it. How are you better? And so what's the upshot of your story? And so it's really important to make sure you are focusing on that and not your sob story, basically. You know, everyone has adversity, and so they just want to know at the end of the day how you're better for it. And also, I think looking at really reading the questions and making sure you're answering the questions that they're asking you in your essays, so that because a lot of the essays get thrown out because really you haven't analyzed the question sufficiently.
Yeah, thank you. Great advice, Sarah. Medina, did you want to add, or were you just saying you agreed? Great. Anyone else want to add anything about scholarships or advice to give current CCC students?
I'm a little late to the game. This is Becky. I'm from Build Exito at PSU.
Yeah.
I would want to say to everyone, get help with your essays and with your application as much as programs are willing to give you. Take advantage of it because that's going to be really helpful, and keep all of the essays and the application information that you've created for one of the scholarships and use that as a springboard for the other ones that you develop. I think that's one thing that I think is super helpful.
Hey, it's Kimberly, the STEM advisor. I sometimes read scholarship applications for Clackamas, and I have found that a lot of students really are not answering the question, just like Sarah said. I'm not sure why. It's easy to read the question and then answer some other question. So really look at the question and then bring whatever you have to write out to the writing center and have a second pair of eyes look and make sure that you don't have any grammatical kinds of errors and that what you have written really does make sense. That would raise you to the top of the pile.
Great advice.
Second that.
Use our writing center. It's good. They're ready to help you. Tori, do you want to ask another question? Thank you for all of your great questions, everyone. Keep them coming. We have about a little less than 15 minutes, but let's go ahead and get to another one.
Yeah, I suspect we will have more questions than time, but we will keep going. Best advice or strategy for commuting to PSU, parking, snacks, etc.
Okay, Alexander.
Yeah, this one's tough for many people. Parking does cost money, plus you're going to be wasting your time driving. Taking a public transportation takes up some of your time, but I managed to do that is kind of get through it. Since I was driving a bus or a Max, you can sit down and you can open a book and you can study and you can read. Just use that time wisely instead of just sitting or browsing through your phone. Then you're not really wasting time and you're actually saving on cost of parking, cost of commuting. Yeah, it's going to take you a little longer, but you're not going to sit in traffic either. And that's something that you can't do and just drive. That is really useful to do. Definitely research into things you have around you. If there is something you can walk 5 minutes away, I have a bus line that's a couple minutes away that I found out that basically goes straight to PSU. And I started using that instead of using a bus, then going to the Max and waiting for the Max out in the cold, and then driving with the Max all the way to PSU. Definitely find out what would work for you best.
Let's see, Jaylani.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything that Alexander said. I mean, Alexander was my buddy. We'd wave at each other across the street when he was getting on the TriMet and I'd get on the Max. So definitely look at your options of transportation. Don't count out the Max just because you think, oh, I don't know what type of people are going to be on there. Like, they're people just like you. And that was one thing, I was a little skeptical about is I don't want to go on the Max. I don't want to take TriMet. And then I quickly realized, dang, look at all this money I'm saving. And, I'm not having to pay for gas. I mean, all I'm having to pay for is 7 minutes to drive to the Orange Line next to the Milwaukee Elks, for myself at least. And 7 minutes is hardly any gas whatsoever. And then the Max just takes you and it's about like half an hour. But if you're looking for parking, just in any general aspect, if it's PSU, OSU, like, get there as quickly as possible. It's, I know with PSU's Orange Line, or just going into Portland with the Orange Line, that if you didn't get there by like 8:26 or something like that, the whole parking lot is filled and there's no parking left whatsoever. Like, you have to basically park on a street a couple blocks away, and then that walk takes you to the Max. Then by that time, you've probably missed the time that you actually wanted to go. So making sure that you're getting there early, it sucks. I know you have to wake up early, but at the end of the day, you want to get to your classes on time. You want to get the education that you deserve. So definitely look at all your options and don't be afraid to wake up early because it's worth it at the end of the day.
Thank you. Let's see, we have one more. Sarah, if you want to add to Alexander and Jaylani.
Yeah, the Max was very convenient for me. And as a Build Exito Scholar interning at OHSU, I was able to obtain a TriMet pass for a year for $50. So that, which was significantly lower than PSU's discounted program. So like that was just really was so affordable for me. And I used TriMet on my off times as well when I was just going downtown just for fun.
All right, thank you all for that. Tori, do you have a next question?
I do. The next question is, how did you know what major you wanted to focus on?
Okay, let's start with Alexander.
That's probably the hardest question you'll have to find answer in your life. What really is your passion? What you really want to do? But the thing is, if you go to your college and ask what type of programs they have, and then you can research in Google what kind of things they do, ask some people around at the school, professors, what is at the end of your career sort of thing. And also researching as in like future, you can research into the rates you're going to be paid, but that's not always like the really important thing. I'd probably research into like, after I'm done with my school with X amount of years, am I still going to be like a really needed candidate for the job, or is it too saturated and it's going to be hard to get a job? Because that sometimes happens. There's like an opening for people and they really want them, but then by the time you finish your schooling, those jobs are already filled in and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, let's see. So Trevor, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think you really just have to go out and experience things. Like I was saying earlier, I thought I wanted to do medicine, but once I actually got up, nothing I wanted to do. So the more you can volunteer, the more you can talk to people, the better off you'll be. I know, I guess when you're researching, you can only, like, you can't actually get the feel for what the ins and outs of the job are actually going to be like. So the more you can volunteer and the more you can talk to people.
Annalisa, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, if you're really interested in something, not necessarily with the intent of engineering, kind of look into that. Again, I studied mechanical engineering, and that in school you're taught a lot of like machine design, that kind of thing. But I was really interested in environmental stuff and renewable energies, and through MECOP I got some water treatment internships, and it turned out I really liked that. And I told the MECOP people that I was interested in that. And because I had those internships, that then led to me going down the career path of water and wastewater treatment. And so if you have any interest, there's probably a connection with engineering. And that takes a good amount of independent research, but work is going to be a lot easier if you're interested in it.
Yeah, I like that last statement. Work is going to be a lot easier if you're interested in it. Tori, do you have another question for our panel?
I do. How do you overcome rejection if you don't get accepted into the transfer school or program you are interested in?
Okay, let's start with Sarah. Oh, and I realized that may have been from the last question.
It was. It's okay. I have had a lot of barriers to overcome in the last few years in my personal life. So people are always going to tell you no. There's always going to be somebody that's going to tell you no. But you just have to have that Rudy mentality. Like if you're really passionate about something, you just keep going after it and you just keep making yourself better. And in my opinion, they're just crabs in a bucket. Like people are gonna try and tell you, well, you have to, you have to have this certain thing or whatever. You're you. You have special talents. Capitalize on those talents. And yeah, you need to know what the landscape looks like, but just keep going.
No one wants to add on. Okay, so, oh, one more. Okay, Medina. Yeah.
So definitely what Sarah said, but I would also add to that you don't necessarily have to see it as all bad. Sometimes it's good when things don't happen. Like I applied to 7 PhD programs, got rejected from all of them. Fall term came and I realized I probably would have dropped out by now. Like if I actually went into a PhD program, just because I was so burnt out after finishing senior year, not half online. Yeah, half of my senior year was online. So it was just a lot of barriers outside of academia. Yeah, a lot of other barriers outside of academia and stuff. So even though it was kind of soul crushing to get 7 letters of rejection, it was like, okay, it's okay. Now I get to explore my interests outside of academia. It's not just going to be homework following me around every single weekend. You can take the time to focus more on yourself aside from being a student. And
Thank you for sharing that, Sarah and Medina. Anyone else, or should we go on to our next question? Okay, go ahead, Tori.
Okay. I am approaching. Has anyone on the panel participated in an REU? And if so, what was your experience? And we might be able to broaden that out a little bit to just kind of research experiences if there aren't any REU people here.
Yeah. So anyone who did an REU or a similar research program? Okay, Medina, yes.
so I did not do an REU, but my lab hosted quite a few REUs. And from my understanding, my PI was very flexible about what they wanted to do. So I think the main projects in the lab focused on more of physics, biology applications of machine learning, and also electrical engineering concepts, which I don't know. But I remember there was an REU who was doing machine learning for traffic data processing, for example. So it's very flexible from my experience of seeing REU students. And in general, my experience in my lab, my PI was very flexible about letting me do what I was interested in. But I would say, like, especially if you were like me and who went into a lab about machine learning without knowing what machine learning really was, there's going to be a giant, like, learning curve where you just you'll feel like you'll spend a lot of time getting nowhere with it, but you're actually just learning what people take classes to learn, just in application instead of in a classroom.
I wanted to add, thank you, Medina. That was a nice, well, at least someone has had a foray into the research world. I wanted to add one thing, which was, in case you didn't know what an REU was, this is a program that is typically a summer program for usually either like rising juniors or rising seniors most of the time. So if you're transferring this year, it'd be something to consider. And it's a program that's across the United States. Most every research university has opportunities where you can work in a lab for the summer with a professor. And so just like Medina was describing in her lab, they had a few of those REUs, and it's often common to have multiple positions within a single lab. Okay, so it's a big program. They pay you, they often pay for your housing as well. So it's something that it's going on right now. So if you're interested in looking at it this summer, the applications are open at a number of places. And I don't know where that link is, but I'll let someone else find that. Let's do one last question. And after that, or actually it's 6 already. So, oh, there's more. Okay, people just, okay, thank you. Before we do that, last question, let's go to Matthew.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I didn't go through an RU program, but I did have a research internship. And the advice I would give is just be ready for a dynamic environment. Like your goals and your projects may change over the course of your research. And that was something I didn't necessarily experience. My project pretty much stayed the same pretty much through my whole internship. But a few of the other interns in the other labs at the institute I was at, a lot of their project, like the goals changed or the project itself changed. So research can, in my experience, it can be a pretty dynamic environment. So you just got to be ready for change is the advice I would give for sure.
And then Trevor, did you want to add anything? I saw your hand earlier.
Yeah, I was just going to say from my experiences, I didn't do an RU research experience, but more like from a science perspective. I felt like graduate research versus like when you're doing undergraduate was a lot different. When I was in undergrad, I basically had to, or I was lucky enough that one of my teachers worked with the labs at OHSU, and he's able to get me in a spot in a cancer research project. And they really wanted to know what my schedule was, what days I could be there, what times. They just wanted that stability. But after talking to current dental students at OHSU, they said the landscape there's a lot different. Like once you're a graduate student, you can basically ask like any faculty if you can help them on a research project. They'll say yes. They're very lenient. They'll be like, oh, like, go ahead and get this paper in or this data in like 3 weeks to a month, because they understand, you're super busy. So I think that there's a lot of differences between research as an undergrad and research as a graduate student.
And so with that, Tori, do you want to transition to having this breakout room for the Build Exito scholars? And we could even talk a little bit about what Build Exito is, although I've seen that there's some comments in the chat about that as well. But it might be a good time to discuss that.
Yeah, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is I just want to thank all of the panelists, and I want to thank everybody for attending today. And hopefully people got lots of their questions answered and got to learn a lot about the different experiences that all of these STEM students have had.